The moon bled over the northern mountains, staining the snow crimson. Wind cut through skin like blades of ice, carrying the scent of wolves, iron, and fear. In the great hall of black stone belonging to the Nightfang clan, torches trembled against ancestral walls, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. She stood at the center of it all, Sarah Whiteclaw, daughter of the fallen Alpha, last heir to a name that once meant power and now was only ash. Her bare feet touched the frozen floor, but she didn't tremble, couldn't, not in front of them. Dozens of wolves watched in silence, golden and silver eyes gleaming in the shadows, some with pity, others with disdain. Most just waited to see if she would survive what came next. The white dress she wore was a lie, pure, virginal symbol of union and peace, but everyone knew the truth. This wasn't a wedding, it was a sacrifice. A blood treaty sewn with the flesh of a woman who never had a choice. At the back of the hall, seated on a throne of bones and twisted wood, sat him, Kyle Bloodfang, the cruelest alpha in the north. They said he'd torn out his own father's heart to take the throne. They said his claws never came back clean. They said he turned enemies to ash and allies to shadows. Sarah believed every word. He watched her with eyes black as the abyss, emotionless, without desire, only possession. To him, she was a symbol, a promise that the Whiteclaw clan would finally bow, that the rebellion of the ancients was dead, that he would reign over everything. Sarah clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. Her wolf was silent, always had been. 22 years of life and nothing. No awakening, no transformation, no connection to the inner beast that should roar in her veins. She was a Whiteclaw without a wolf, a joke, a shame, a failure of blood. And now she would be a monster's wife. The elders began to chant, ancient words in a language Sarah barely understood, but which made the air vibrate. The ritual was beginning. Kyle stood, moving like a predator, each step measured, each muscle tense beneath the skin. He didn't smile, didn't need to. His power filled the hall like toxic smoke, suffocating, dominating. But then the doors opened, and everything changed. The Alpha King entered, Theron Nightborn, ruler of shadows, lord of the northern clans. Tall, covered by a black cape embroidered with silver runes, he brought with him an aura that made even Kyle step back. But Sarah barely noticed him, because behind him, silent as death, came another, a Gamma. She didn't know his name, didn't know his story, but the moment the wind brought his scent, pine, mist, and something wild, something ancient, the world stopped. And for the first time in her life, Sarah felt it, her wolf, the awakening of the beast. Pain came like lightning. Sarah fell to her knees, hands clutching the stone floor, breath trapped in her throat. It was as if something had torn her chest from the inside out, burning, breaking, rebirthing. Bones crackled, muscles contracted, and then the voice. Mate! It wasn't human. It was wild, hoarse, desperate. Her wolf, her beast. The one that had always been dormant, buried under layers of fear and doubt, now screaming with uncontrollable force. Mate is here! The hall erupted in murmurs. Kale snarled, advancing, but Theron raised his hand, a simple gesture that froze the Bloodfang Alpha in place. The Alpha King's eyes gleamed, curious, amused. Interesting, Theron murmured, his deep voice echoing through the silence. Seems your bride has a wolf after all. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't obey. Everything spun. Her body was no longer hers. The wolf inside pulled, scratched, demanded she look, that she see, that she recognize. And when she finally raised her eyes, she met his. The Gamma stood near the entrance, motionless as a statue. He wasn't handsome in the traditional sense. His face was hard, marked by scars that cut from temple to jaw. Dark hair fell disheveled over grey eyes, cold, distant. He wore black leather armor, without adornments, without symbols. He was a soldier, a ghost, someone who lived in shadows and asked for no recognition, but to Sarah's wolf he was everything. "Go to him," the beast snarled. "Now!" "No," Sarah whispered, but her voice came out weak, broken. "I can't," because she knew what this meant. True bond, soulmate. The most sacred bond between wolves, one that couldn't be denied, broken, or ignored. And she'd just found hers at the worst possible moment. Kyle roared, the sound echoing like thunder. "What does this mean?" Theron smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "It means, Kyle Bloodfang, that your bride has found her true mate, and it's not you." The silence that followed was poisonous. Sarah felt the weight of dozens of gazes, judging, waiting. The treaty was in ruins, peace between clans destroyed, and all because of a bond she hadn't asked for. Kyle took a step forward, claws extending, canines showing. "She's mine, by treaty right, by blood law." "Laws can be broken," Theron said, disinterested. Then he turned to the Gamma. "Ronan, do you feel it?" The Gamma, Ronan, didn't answer immediately, but his grey eyes fixed on Sarah, and for the first time something flickered in that void. Recognition, conflict, pain. "Yes," he said, voice low, hoarse as if the words hurt. "I feel it." And Sarah's world crumbled. The forbidden bond. They took her to a room high in the tower, a prison disguised as courtesy. Guards blocked the door. Windows opened to an impassable precipice. Sarah was alone, except for the wolf now screaming endlessly inside her head. "Go back to him! Find him! Protect him!" "Shut up," Sarah whispered, pressing hands to her temples. But the beast wouldn't obey. She was young, wild, completely consumed by the bond. And Sarah had no control. She'd never had training, never learned to master the wolf because she'd never had one to master. Now she was trapped with an uncontrollable force that threatened to destroy her from the inside out. Hours passed. The moon rose. And then the door opened. Ronan entered. He didn't ask permission, didn't knock, simply closed the door behind him and stood there, watching her with those impossibly unreadable grey eyes. The bond pulsed between them, tangible, almost visible, threads of golden light that pulled, connected, demanded. "You shouldn't be here," Sarah said, backing up until she hit the wall. "I know. If Kale finds out, he already knows." Ronan crossed his arms, posture rigid, defensive. "The Alpha King made it clear. You and I, we're a problem." Sarah laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "A problem? Is that what you call it? Do you have another name?" "Disaster. Curse. The end of everything." She slid down the wall until she sat on the floor, hugging her knees. "I should have stayed dead. Like my father. Like my clan. Maybe then none of this would have happened." Ronan didn't respond immediately. Then, surprisingly, he approached and knelt in front of her. Up close, Sarah could see every scar, every battle mark that crossed his face. He smelled like smoke and pine, and her wolf whimpered with need. "Your wolf is young," he said, voice softer now. "Newly awakened. It will try to dominate you. And you? Is your wolf like that too?" He hesitated. "No, my wolf is ancient, silent, but it recognizes you, and that's dangerous." "Why?" "Because true bonds are rare and powerful. And when two wolves recognize each other like this, they don't accept separation. They'll fight, kill, destroy anything that keeps them apart." Sarah swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" Ronan stared at her for a long moment, then slowly extended his hand. "Accept the bond, or reject it, but choose quickly, because Kale won't wait." Sarah looked at his hand, rough, marked by calluses and scars. A warrior's hand, a hand that had probably taken many lives, but also the hand of the man her wolf chose, that her destiny intertwined with hers. She didn't touch it. "I can't," she whispered. The treaty is paper and empty promises. You think Kale cares about peace. He wants power, and you're just a means to that. And you? What do you want?" The question caught Ronan off guard. He withdrew his hand, standing, turning his back to her. For a moment, Sarah thought he would leave without answering, but then he spoke, so low she almost didn't hear. "I want you to live." And before Sarah could respond, he left, leaving her alone with the wolf now crying for him. The impossible choice dawn brought Kyle. He entered without ceremony, kicking the door with enough force to crack the wood. Sarah stood near the window, watching snow fall over the distant mountains. She didn't turn, didn't want to see the hatred in his eyes. "You shamed me," Kyle said, voice low, dangerous. "In front of the Alpha King, in front of all the clans. It wasn't my choice." "Wasn't it?" He advanced, grabbing her arm and spinning her to face him. His claws dug into her skin, drawing blood. "You let your wolf awaken for another man. You accepted the bond with a worthless gamma, nameless, powerless, and now you think you can break our treaty. The true bond. I don't care." He pulled her close, so close Sarah could feel his hot breath against her face. "You're mine, by right, by law, and I'll prove it." Before Sarah could react, Kyle kissed her, violent, forced, painful. She tried to push him away, but he was too strong. The wolf inside her roared, screamed, fought, not with desire but pure rejection. Everything in her rejected that touch, every fiber, every instinct. And then something broke. Sarah bit, hard, tasted blood exploding in her mouth as Kyle pulled back with a snarl. But she didn't stop. The wolf took control, partially, uncontrollably. And for the first time, Sarah felt claws extend from her hands. She attacked. She wasn't skilled, wasn't trained, but she was desperate, and desperation had its own power. Kyle blocked easily, shoving her against the wall with force that expelled air from her lungs. But when he raised his hand to retaliate, the door exploded. Ronan. He entered like a storm, moving with speed Sarah could barely follow. In 1 second, he was between her and Kale. In another, he had the Bloodfang Alpha against the wall, forearm pressed against his throat. "Touch her again," Ronan snarled, voice transformed into something animal, "and I'll rip out your spine." Kyle laughed, a terrible sound, full of hatred. "You dare threaten me, Gamma? You forget your place." "My place," Ronan said, squeezing harder, "is beside my mate. And you just lost yours." For a moment Sarah thought Ronan would kill him, saw death in his eyes, in the tension of every muscle. But then Theron entered. "Enough!" The Alpha King's voice was absolute, admitted no contest. "Ronan, release him!" Ronan hesitated, then slowly stepped back. Kale fell, coughing, hand at his throat. Theron looked at each of them. Kale with hatred, Ronan with icy control, Sarah with blood on her lips and fear in her eyes. "The treaty is broken," the Alpha King said, as if declaring the weather. "Kyle Bloodfang, you attempted to force a rejected bond. That's against our laws." "Laws?" Kyle spat blood. "You speak of laws when you steal my bride?" "She was never yours." Theron turned to Sarah. "And you, Sarah Whiteclaw, you have a choice. Accept the true bond with Ronan and end the treaty, or reject it. Marry Kyle and fulfill your dead father's promise." Silence. The world waited. And Sarah, with blood on her lips and a wolf screaming in her chest, finally understood. There was no right choice, only survival. "I choose the bond," she said, voice firm for the first time. "I choose Ronan." And the North exploded into war. The flight from Shadow's night fell fast over the mountains, bringing with it the smell of blood and betrayal. Kyle hadn't accepted the decision. Of course not. Men like him never accepted defeat. They transformed it into vengeance. Sarah ran, bare feet sinking into snow, lungs burning with frozen air. Ronan was ahead, guiding her through trails only he knew, secret paths between rocks and pines. Behind them the sound of howls tore through the night. Kyle's pack hunted them. "Faster," Ronan said without looking back. "I can't—" Sarah stumbled, falling to her knees. Blood stained the snow where her cut feet touched. She wasn't used to this, wasn't trained to flee, to fight, to survive as a wolf. Ronan stopped, turning. For a moment, Sarah saw something in his eyes, not pity but understanding. He knelt in front of her, offering his back. "Climb." "No, I'll slow you down, Sarah." He looked over his shoulder, and for the first time, she saw real emotion in that normally empty face. Fear, not for himself, for her. "Climb, now." She obeyed, wrapping arms around his neck as Ronan stood with surprising ease. Then he ran. Not like a human, but like something in between, something between man and beast, muscles burning with supernatural strength. The forest became a blur. Trees passed like ghosts. The moon appeared and disappeared between branches, and the howls grew closer and closer. "They'll catch us," Sarah said, voice trembling. "I know. Then why are we running?" "Because I need to get you somewhere safe first." "Safe? In the north there is no safe, Ronan. Not for us." He didn't answer, just kept running, descending the mountain, plunging into a valley where mist gathered thick as water. And there, among the shadows, Sarah saw ruins, an ancient temple, half destroyed by time, covered in moss and vines. Broken columns rose like giant bones. Ancient symbols glowed faintly on the stones, marks of wolves who lived centuries ago. "What is this place?" Sarah whispered. "Sanctuary," Ronan said, lowering her carefully. "Sacred ground. Even Kyle wouldn't dare violate this." Sarah doubted it, but she had no other choice. She followed Ronan into the ruins, where silence was absolute, heavy, ancient. The air smelled of wet stone and forgotten history. Ronan guided her to the center, where a circle of stones formed a kind of altar. He knelt, touching the ground with reverence. "My mother brought me here once," he said, voice distant. "When I was a child. She said this place held the first bond, the first mate, and that as long as there was true love in the world, this place would protect those who sought it. Do you believe that?" Ronan looked at her. "I believe in you." The words hit her like a punch. Sarah felt her chest tighten, eyes burn. No one had ever said that. No one had ever believed in her. The girl without a wolf, the failed heir, the broken promise. But Ronan believed, and that changed everything. Before she could respond, the howls exploded in volume. They'd arrived. Mikhail entered the ruins like a conqueror, surrounded by 12 wolves in full form, massive beasts of black fur and fire eyes. He himself was partially transformed, face distorted between man and monster. "You thought a dead temple would protect you?" Kale laughed. "There are no gods here, only me." Ronan stood, placing himself between Sarah and the pack. He didn't transform, just waited, eyes cold, posture relaxed, the calm before the storm. "Last chance," Kale said. "Hand her over, and maybe I'll let you live as a slave." "No." "Then die." Kyle attacked. The price of betrayal. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. Ronan transformed in a second, bones breaking, muscles expanding, until a giant wolf of storm-grey fur occupied the space. He was larger than any other there, faster, more deadly. A Gamma shouldn't have this power. Gammas were soldiers, not leaders. But Sarah now understood why Ronan served the Alpha King. Because if he hadn't, he would have been killed out of fear. He was too strong, too dangerous, and completely loyal to her. He moved like lightning, tearing out the first wolf's throat before it could react, dodged the second, spinning and sinking teeth into its spine. The third tried to attack from behind, but Ronan turned, using the enemy's weight against itself and hurling it against the stones with force that broke bones. Sarah watched, paralyzed. Her wolf screamed to help, to transform, to fight beside her mate, but she didn't know how. Instinct pulled, but control was lacking. More wolves fell, but Kyle didn't attack. He waited, letting his pack weaken Ronan, exhaust him. It was cruel strategy, but effective. When only 3 wolves remained besides Kyle, Ronan was bleeding. Deep wounds cut his flank. One ear was torn, but he was still standing, still protecting Sarah. "Enough," Kyle said, voice echoing even in bestial form. "You fought well, Gamma, but it's over." He advanced, not alone, but with the three remaining wolves in coordinated formation. It was classic hunting technique. Surround, distract, kill. Ronan roared, but was slow now, exhausted. When he turned to block one attack, another hit him in the back. When he retreated, the third bit his hind leg, and Kale went for the throat. No! Sarah didn't think, didn't plan, just acted. She ran, throwing herself in front of Ronan the moment Kale attacked. Felt teeth pierce her shoulder, felt bone give. The pain was absolute, but she didn't scream. Instead, something broke inside her. And for the first time, Sarah Whiteclaw transformed completely. It wasn't gradual, wasn't controlled. It was an explosion of light and fury, bones rearranging in seconds, skin tearing to make way for snow-white fur. Her wolf was smaller than Ronan's, more slender, but carried something different, ancient power, alpha power, because Sarah wasn't just Whiteclaw. She was the last direct descendant of the first pack, and her blood sang with magic the others had forgotten. She snarled, a sound that made the temple stones vibrate, and then she attacked. Kyle tried to retreat, but she was too fast. Sank teeth into his neck, not to kill, but to dominate, to force him to the ground, to show he wasn't alpha here. She was. The remaining wolves hesitated, then one by one lowered their heads. Submission, recognition. Even Kyle stopped fighting. Sarah released him, stepping back, panting. Blood dripped from her mouth. Her shoulder burned, but she was standing, was alive, and had won. Ronan approached, brushing his muzzle against hers, a gesture of reverence, of love, of relief. They didn't need words. The bond sang between them. Kyle rose slowly, returning to human form. Blood stained his skin. Hatred burned in his eyes. "This isn't over," he spat. "No," Sarah agreed, her own voice coming out distorted through wolf form. "But you lost." And as Kyle retreated with his broken pack, Sarah finally understood. She was never weak, just dormant. And now she was awake. The final confrontation. The Alpha King arrived at dawn. Theron Nightborn didn't come alone. He brought his full guard, 50 wolves from the most loyal clans, all in battle formation. But when he saw Sarah and Ronan standing in the center of the ruins, surrounded by dead wolves and blood-stained stones, he smiled. "Impressive," he said, dismounting his black horse. "Seems I underestimated you both." Sarah had returned to human form, wrapped in Ronan's cloak to cover her nakedness. Wounds marked her skin, the shoulder pierced by Kyle, cuts on arms and legs. But she stood erect, proud. "I came to fulfill the treaty," she said, voice firm. Theron raised an eyebrow. "The treaty you broke by choosing Ronan?" "No, a new treaty." Sarah took a step forward, ignoring the pain. "Kyle Bloodfang tried to force me, tried to violate the true bond, tried to kill my mate. He broke every law of the North. And you propose? Challenge for leadership of the Bloodfang clan." Silence. Absolute. Complete. Ronan spun to face her, eyes wide. "Sarah, no. I have the right," she interrupted. "I'm alpha by blood, and Kyle failed as leader. By law, I can challenge him." Theron studied her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Very well. Kyle Bloodfang will be summoned. The challenge will happen tonight, under the full moon. Winner takes the clan. Loser." He left the sentence unfinished. Everyone knew what happened to losers in alpha challenges. Death. Hours later, in the great stone circle where challenges had been decided for 1,000 years, Sarah stood facing Kale. The moon was high. Wolves from all clans formed a living wall around them, watching in silence. Kyle was transformed, massive beast of muscle and hatred, twice Sarah's size in wolf form. But she felt no fear, only determination. "You'll die screaming," Kyle snarled. Sarah didn't respond, just waited for Theron's signal. When the Alpha King lowered his hand, she transformed. What followed was a fight that would be told for generations. Kyle attacked with brute force, each blow capable of breaking bones. But Sarah was fast, dodging, counter-attacking with precision. She used the terrain, the stones, Kyle's own weight against him. But speed wasn't enough. He was too experienced, too brutal. One blow hit her flank, hurling her against the stones. Another bit her paw, making her stumble. Sarah fell, coughing blood. Kyle advanced for the final blow. And then Ronan roared. Not to intervene, he couldn't. The rules of the challenge were absolute, but the roar carried something more. Reminder, strength, faith. Rise, the sound said. Fight, live. And Sarah remembered every humiliation. Every time they called her a failure, every moment they treated her as nothing, remembered her father dying, her clan falling. Her blood being sold as merchandise, and something inside her broke, didn't break, transformed. When she rose, she was different. Her fur glowed with silver light, her eyes burned golden, and the air around her vibrated with ancient power. True alpha, pure bloodline, blood of the first pack. She charged, not with force, but with authority. Her snarl made even Kyle hesitate, and in that hesitation, Sarah attacked, not to kill, to dominate. Sank teeth into his throat, but didn't pierce. Just held, forced him to the ground, pressed until he stopped fighting. "Submit!" she snarled. Kyle fought, clawed, snapped at air, but she was relentless. Submit or die. For a long moment, Sarah thought he would choose death, but then slowly, Kyle exposed his throat. Submission. She released him, stepping back. The circle of wolves erupted in howls, not of joy, but recognition. New alpha, new power. Theron approached, eyes gleaming with approval. "Sarah Whiteclaw," he declared, voice echoing, "alpha of the Bloodfang clan. By northern law, you've earned your position, and with it, your freedom." Sarah transformed back, falling to her knees, exhausted. But she felt something different. Not fear, not shame. Peace. And when Ronan knelt beside her, pulling her into an embrace, she finally cried. The dawn of wolves. 3 months later, the North was different. The Bloodfang clan was now led not by cruelty, but by justice. Sarah had freed those Kyle enslaved, healed wounds he'd opened, rebuilt what he'd destroyed, and slowly, the clan began to trust. Kyle was alive. Sarah had spared his life, but exiled him to the distant mountains. Some said she should have killed him, but Sarah understood something others didn't. Death created martyrs. Exile created forgetting. Ronan remained by her side, not as shadow, but as equal. He didn't seek power, didn't want recognition, just wanted to be with her, and that was enough. They completed the bond under the full moon, surrounded by witnesses from all clans. It was a simple ceremony, without luxury, without pomp. Just two wolves, recognizing what had always been true. They belonged to each other. Now, Sarah stood in the same hall where she'd almost been forced to marry Kale. But everything was different. The bone throne had been burned. The walls were painted. Sunlight entered through windows for the first time in years. And by her side, Ronan held her hand. "Do you think it will work?" he asked, voice low. "What we're building?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "But we'll try. Because that's what survivors did. They tried. They fought. They rebuilt." A young wolf entered. A girl, maybe 15, an orphan Sarah had taken in. She bowed, nervous. "Alpha, a messenger from the Alpha King has arrived." Sarah and Ronan exchanged glances. Then together they went to receive the message. Theron waited in the courtyard, still mounted on his horse, black cape swaying in the wind. "I came to make a proposal," he said without preamble. "What kind of proposal?" "An alliance, a true one. Not of forced blood or broken treaties, but of mutual respect." He dismounted, approaching. "You've proven yourself worthy, Sarah Whiteclaw, and the North needs leaders like you." Sarah considered. Part of her wanted to refuse. Alliances were dangerous. But another part, the part that had learned to lead, understood the need. "Under what terms?" "Autonomy, you govern Bloodfang as you see fit, but in times of war, we fight together. And in times of peace." Theron smiled. We learned to coexist. It wasn't a perfect promise, but it was honest. And in the north, honesty was worth more than flowery promises. Sarah extended her hand. Agreed. Theron shook it, the seal made. And as he departed, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Ronan embraced her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You did well," he murmured. "We did well." She turned to face him, raising her hand to touch his scarred face. "You saved me, Ronan. Not just that night, but every day since." "No," he said, covering her hand with his. "You saved yourself. I was just there to witness it." Sarah smiled. Genuine, real, free. And as the moon began to rise over the northern mountains, two wolves ran together through the snow. Not fleeing, not hunting, just free. The girl who was promised to a cruel alpha had found her destiny, not in obedience, not in submission, but in choice. And in that choice, she discovered something no one could take away: herself.